Welcome to EPG Pathashala. I am V. Kannan, former Pro Vice Chancellor of University of Hyderabad, Professor of Mathematics in the same university. The course title is Vedic Epic and Puranic Culture of India. The present module is Women in Vedas. In this module, we are going to discuss the status of women in the Vedic era as we can understand from the study of Vedic literature. The learning objectives in this module are the following: Introduction to Women in Vedas, Women in Vedic Society, Birth of the concept of Goddess, Position of women in the society, Education of the girl child, Women and marriage system, Wifehood in the Vedic era, Divorce, remarriage and widowhood, Prostitution in the Vedic age, same in the later Vedic period, and the anecdotes of 4 important particular women in Rigveda, namely Ghosha, Lopamudra, Maitreyi and Gargi, and finally a summary of results that we have seen about the status of women in Vedas. We first start with the item Women in Vedas, an introduction. Early Vedic age can be called as golden period of womanhood in India. In that age, women enjoyed an honored place in the society. The education of girls was not neglected. The wife was the mistress of the household and she was an authority over the slaves of the family. In all religious ceremonies, she participated with her husband. The later day habits like Parda system and Sati system were absent in the Vedic society. Polygamy was occasionally practiced. It was confined only to kings and chiefs. Remarriage of widows also happened occasionally. However, the women were not completely independent and they had to remain under the care of their male relatives. The girls were married after attaining puberty also and sometimes before also. The practice of Swayamvara was also prevalent among other systems of marriage. The Rigveda mentions the names of some learned ladies like Vishwavara, Apala and Ghosha, who composed mantras and who attained the rank of rishis. Now we will start in detail the study of the status of women in Vedic society. The home has verily its foundation in the wife. Thus says a passage in the Rigveda. Later in Smriti also, this has been echoed in the words Grihini Grihamuchyate. The house is nothing but the lady of the house. During the Vedic age, women were assigned a high place in society. They shared an equal standing with their menfolk and enjoyed a kind of liberty that actually had societal sanctions. To understand this equality, we quote a passage from Yajurveda. When people wanted to get children, some of them preferred male children and some others female children, but both were there. Yah kamayeta pumanasya jayeteti. And similarly, yah kamayeta striyasya jayeteti. This means as much as one desired to have a son, similarly one desired to have a daughter also. It is one way in which the equality between the two sexes is explicitly mentioned in the Vedic literature. The ancient Vedic philosophical concept of Shakti, Parahasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate, says an Upanishad. This concept of Shakti of the God, it is the feminine principle of energy. It was also a product of this Vedic age. This took the form of worship of the female idols or goddesses. The birth of the concept of goddess we are going to see now. The feminine forms of the absolute and the popular Hindu goddesses are believed to have taken shape in the Vedic era itself. In the picture we are seeing goddess Kali portrayed, and she is portraying the destructive energy. These female forms came to represent different feminine qualities and energies of the Brahman, the Supreme Being. Here we see three goddesses. Durga, the protective, Veda says, Durgam Devigam Sharanamaham Prapadye. Next, in the middle, we see Lakshmi, the nourishing goddess. Veda says, Lakshmi Manapagamini. Thirdly, we are seeing Saraswati, the goddess of creativity. Veda says, Yad Vacho Madhumat Tasmin Swaha Saraswatyai. Thus, Durga, Lakshmi, and Saraswati are goddesses worshipped in Vedic literature. Here we see Gayatri. Gayatri Devi is worshipped as Veda Mata. It is to be noticed that the Vedic religion recognizes both the masculine and the feminine attributes of the divine. Feminine aspects are equally important. The Vedic concept gave rise to the worship in later periods of many male-female divine duos. Divya Dampati like Radha Krishna, Sita Rama, Uma Mahesha, Lakshmi Narayana, etc. Where in all these couple forms, the female form is usually addressed first. Here we are seeing Divya Dampati, Radha Krishna, Uma Mahesha, Lakshmi Narayana and Sita Rama. We have so far seen about women goddesses. Now we move on to the position of women in the society. During the Vedic period, women were held at a very high position in the society, at an exalted status. Unlike in the later period, the Vedic age did allow women greater liberty, freedom, and respect, and they were not looked down upon. Firstly, girls could be educated. Girls could be taken for the samskaras of Upanayana, Brahmacharya, etc. That itself suggests there was a sense of equality between boys and girls. In Vedas, there are mentions of women sages. These sages were even mantra drashtri, that is, they contributed to the composition, the revelation of the mantras of Vedas also. Women were taking part in sacrifices and rituals. And as already seen, there were goddesses who were worshipped. Hymns of the Rig Veda speak of the honor and love a man must have for his wife. The relationship between a wife and a husband in its purity is compared to the relationship between a soul and a God. According to this system prevalent in Vedas, the Gandharva Vivaha was allowed. a man and a woman may both choose their own spouses. We can also observe that there are contrary views. We have portrayed the status of women as highly exalted, but not all scholars agree to this. There are other points of view. The other scholars are pointing out that even though the goddesses were worshipped, the goddesses who were worshipped were given less importance than the gods. There are more mantras for the gods and less for the goddesses. Secondly, the hymns dedicated to women are very few in number. The women sages mentioned are very few when compared with the number of male seers. There is no mention of women priests, and there is no mention of women receiving dana or dakshina. It looks like a patriarchal society where preference is to the male's lineage. A woman, like nowadays, in those days also, had several roles to play in society and had only a few liberties and rights. This is another side of the status. We will go back to the first side. Contrary to these views, Atharva Veda mentions several high positions given to the women. It says women should be valiant, women should earn fame, women should become scholars, women should be illuminating, women should be prosperous and wealthy, they should be intelligent and knowledgeable, they should take part in the legislative chambers and in governmental organizations. They should take a lead stage in ruling the nation also, and also in societal works. They should have the same right as son over father's property. They should be the protector of family and society. They should be the provider of wealth and food. They should be the providers of prosperity. They should ride on chariots. They should even participate in wars. And this is what Atharva Veda mostly and Yajurveda occasionally mentions about the status of women in Vedas. First, we will talk about the education of the girl child. Vedic literature prizes the birth of a scholarly daughter. We will give two references. One is from Mahanirvana Tantra, which says that a girl also should be brought up and educated with great effort and care. Another is from Devi Mahatmyam, which says all forms of knowledge are aspects of Devi. All women throughout the world are the forms of Devi. Women who so desired could undergo the sacred thread ceremony. This is called Upanayana. This is a sacrament to pursue Vedic studies. Nowadays, this is meant only for males. But in Vedic era, occasionally females were allowed voluntarily to have Upanayanam. The mention of female scholars and sages of the Vedic age like Vach, Ambrani, Romasha, Gargi, and so on, this view of Upanayana is corroborated by these names of women scholars. These highly intelligent and greatly learned women who chose the path of Vedic studies were called Brahmavadinis. Women who opted out of education for married life, they were called Sadyovadhus. Co-education seems to have existed in this period. Both the sexes got equal attention from the teacher. Ladies from the Kshatriya class received martial arts courses and also training in arms. For women, the marriage systems were many. It could be Swayamvaram, in which she chooses her husband from an available lot. It could be Brahmam, where her father, as it happens nowadays, gives her to a Vedic scholar as a wife. It could be a Gandharva Vivaham, which is something like a love marriage, where the male and female counterparts mutually agree and then marry each other. Actually, there were 8 types of marriages. The Smriti Granthas describe all these 8. Among the 8, 4 were more prominent. The first was Brahma Vivaha, where the daughter was given as a gift to a good man learned in the Vedas. The second was Daiva Vivaha, where the daughter was given as a gift to the presiding priest of a Vedic sacrifice. The third was Arsha Vivaha, where the groom had to pay to get the lady. The fourth was Prajapatya Vivaha, where the father gave his daughter to a man who promised monogamy and faithfulness. The other 4 are not described today, but they are available in the Manu Smriti and other Smritis. In the Vedic age, there was both the custom of Kanya Vivaha and the custom of Praudha Vivaha. Kanya Vivaha means the marriage is for a pre-puberty girl who has not attained a mature age. Praudha Vivaha means the marriage of a girl after attaining puberty. Both were allowed. Particularly Kanya Vivaha was prevalent among Brahmins and Praudha Vivaha was prevalent among Kshatriyas. There was also the custom of Swayamvara. Usually it was there in royal families. The girl had the freedom to choose her husband from among the eligible bachelors invited to her house for the occasion. Wifehood in the Vedic age has been described in later Smritis like this: Karyeshu Dasi, Karaneshu Mantri, Bhodyeshu Mata, Shayaneshu Rambha, Rupeshu Lakshmi, Kshamaya Dharitri, Satkarma Nari, Kuladharma Patni. This is not a Vedic passage, but this is a passage from Smritis, which are texts remembered from Vedas. As at present, after marriage, the girl became a grihini or a wife and was considered Ardhangini, or one half of her husband's being, and this is clearly stated in Vedic passages themselves. Ardhova Esha Atmanaha Yat Patni, says Taittiriya Brahmanam, wife is half of the husband's body. Both of them constituted the griha or home. She was considered its Samrajni. Samrajni means queen or mistress of the household. Samrajni Adhi Devrishu Snushanagisvasuranam Prajaya Ashtadhanasya. For the wealth there, for the children there, for the other members of the family, she is considered as the queen of the house. She had an equal share in the performance of rituals and rites. Actually, in her absence, her male counterpart loses his right in performing sacrifices and rites. Ayajnova Eshaha Yo Patnikaha, says Taittiriya Brahmanam. A person without a wife be it before marriage or be it after wife's death, he becomes ineligible for not only performing Vedic sacrifices but even for participating in Vedic sacrifices performed by others. He loses his right once he is without a wife. Wife's position is important for all Vedic sacrifices. She was not compelled at the death of her wife to merciless practices. Even though the tonsuring of the head is mentioned in Vedas, Matvam Vikeshi Pura Avadhishtaha, but at the same time, a widow was not compelled to do so. She was not also compelled for Sahagamana, the practice of the sati, which was prevalent in some states of India on a later date. If they chose to, they could live a life of a sannyasini. They can go to a hermit after the husband passed away. So far we have seen the status of a woman in the household. Now we see the status of prostitutes. Prostitutes were very much a part of the later Vedic society. They were allowed to make a living. They were accepted in the society, but their lives were regulated by a code of conduct. They came to be known as Devadasis in later period. These girls were married to God in a temple. They were expected to spend the rest of their life as the maid serving the men in the society. Now we come to the concept of women rishis who perform penances and do Veda Sakshatkara. The Rig Veda mentions Romasha, Lopamudra, Apala, Kadru, Vishwavara, Ghosha, Juhu, Vagambhrini, Paulomi, Yami, Indrani, Savitri and Devajani. The Samaveda adds Nodha, Akrishta Bhasha, Sikata Nivavari and Gaupayana. When it comes to talking about significant female figures of the Vedic period, apart from the women rishis, we have many more. Sulabha Maitreyi, Gargi Kakshivati, Dakshina Prajapatya, Vishwavara Atreyi, Godha, Apala, Yami Vaivaswati, Lopamudra, Lomasha Swanya, Aditi Dakshayani, Ratri Bharadvaja, Vasukra Patni, Surya Savitri, Indrani, Sharma Devasuni, Urvashi, Shashwati, Angirasi and Sri Laksha and some others like that. Women rishis were called Rishikas. About 30 of them are named in the Rig Veda. Now let us see some stories of some of these women rishis. Lopamudra was the wife of Agastya. She was known for her command over Sanskrit and Tamil, two languages. The meaning of the word Lopamudra is one who is totally absorbed in herself. She was one of the Brahmavadini Rishi Patnis. Two mantras of the Rig Veda are attributed to her. There were women scholars like Romasha, the wife of Swanya, Vishwavara belonging to the Atri family, Angirasi Saraswati of Angirasa family and so on. The seers of Rig Veda Suktas, plenty of them in the 10th mandala, are women. Gargi was one of the learned persons summoned by King Janaka. The Upanishads refer to the conversation between Maitreyi and her husband Yajnavalkya. In some texts, the stage of attaining Brahmajnana is described. For example, Gargi got it in the Brahmacharya stage. Chudala attained it. while she was a household lady grihastha. Maitreyi attained it, that is, God knowledge, divine knowledge, while she was in the Vanaprastha stage of life. Sulabha Yogini attained it while she was a sannyasini. Therefore, at different stages, these ladies have attained the superior knowledge. Now, we are going to see particularly 4 ladies and their stories in Vedas. There are 27 women seers, but most of them are just abstractions. Ghosha is not like that. She was a definite human form. She was the granddaughter of Dirghatamas. She was the daughter of Kakshivat. And both these, that is, her father and grandfather, they were composers of hymns in praise of Ashwins. Ghosha also has 2 entire hymns of the 10th book, each containing 14 verses assigned to her name, Ghosha Suktas. She suffered from an incurable disfiguring disease. This is her story. The disease could be leprosy. She remained a spinster at her father's house. Her implorations with the Ashwins, Ashwins are twin gods, her devotion for the forefathers towards them made them cure her disease. Not only she, her father and grandfather were also Ashwins worshippers. Therefore, the twin gods helped cure her disease. And then she had a married life. This is the story of Ghosha. 3 more lady characters described in Vedas we will study. In Rig Veda, there are long conversations between the sage Agastya and his wife Lopamudra. This testifies to the great intelligence and goodness of the latter. The legend is like this. Lopamudra was first created by the sage Agastya and given as a daughter to the king of Vidarbha. The royal couple gave her the best possible education and brought her up amidst luxury. When she attained a marriageable age, Agastya, the sage who was under the vows of celibacy and poverty, wanted to own her. Lopa agreed to marry him, and she left her palace and riches, and she went for a simple life in Agastya's hermitage. But Agastya was celibate. She served her husband faithfully for a long period, but she grew tired of Agastya's austere practices. Agastya could not attend to her. She wrote a hymn of 2 stanzas, making an impassioned plea for his attention and love. His means her husband's. Soon afterwards, the sage realized his duties towards his wife, and he performed both his domestic and ascetic life with equal zeal. He reached a wholeness of spiritual and physical powers. Then a son was born to them. He was named Dridhasyu, who later became a great poet. This is the story of Lopamudra. There are 2 other stories we are going to study now. Maitreyi. Rig Veda contains about 1000 hymns, of which about 10 are accredited to Maitreyi, the woman seer and philosopher. She contributed towards the enhancement of her sage husband Yajnavalkya's personality and in the flowering of his spiritual thoughts. Yajnavalkya had 2 wives, Maitreyi and Katyayani. While Maitreyi was well versed in the Vedic scriptures, she was a Brahmavadini. Katyayani was an ordinary woman. Then the story goes, one day the sage decided to make a settlement of his worldly possessions between his 2 wives, share the wealth, distribute the wealth between these 2 wives, and renounced the world by taking up ascetic vows. He wanted to become a sannyasi. Then he asked his wives what their wishes were. The learned Maitreyi asked her husband if all the wealth in the world would make her immortal. The sage replied, "No, the wealth could only make one rich, nothing else. It cannot make one immortal." Then Maitreyi asked her husband for the wealth of immortality and not for the wealth of money and riches. Yajnavalkya was happy to hear this. He imparted Maitreyi the doctrine of the soul, and he also imparted his knowledge of attaining immortality. This is the story of Maitreyi. So far we have gone through the stories of three great ladies, now the fourth, Gargi. She was a Vedic prophetess. She was the daughter of sage Vachaknu. She composed several hymns that questioned the origin of all existence. When King Janaka of Videha in the Mithila city, he organized a Brahma Yajna, a philosophers' congress, and that was centered around the fire sacrament. Gargi was one of the eminent participants. She was a lady participant among so many male participants. She challenged the sage Yajnavalkya with a volley of embarrassing questions on the soul or Atman. These questions confounded the learned man, who had till then silenced many an eminent scholar. Gargi's fame rose up. This is the story of Gargi. So far, we have seen stories of four great ladies mentioned in the Vedic literature. Now we come to the summary of what we have seen so far. We saw about women rishis. Even though they were very few, they contributed a lot for the cause of the society and for the Vedas. Next we saw about the status of women in the society. We mentioned that women were allowed to live gracefully even after the death of their husbands. A widow can lead a very purposeful life. One mantra says, Udirshvanar yabhijiva lokam. This mantra says that a lady need not completely fall down after the death of her husband. She can still rise up and lead a very purposeful life. Again we come to the ladies and their status in the household, in their family. In the very beginning, when the marriages are performed, the husband tells the wife, Ashme vattvaggisthira bhava. You should be firm as a stone. Therefore, the ladies were considered superior. In the family, she was given a high status. Throughout the many years of Vedic culture, women have always been given the highest level of respect and freedom. But also, they were under the protection and safety of the other gender. There is a saying in Manusmriti, Yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devataha yatraitastu na pujyante sarvastatra phalah kriyaha. This means wherever the ladies are respected, the gods are living happily there. Wherever the ladies are ignored, then all Vedic rituals become a waste. They will not yield fruits. ladies and their status, the respect that they receive in the family, that becomes an important factor to decide whether the Vedic karmas that are performed will yield good fruit or not. This is the dictum given in the great Manusmriti. Where the women are happy, there will be prosperity. Students, now we have come to the end of the module on women in Vedas. To know more about this, you can read the e-text available along with this, and also the list of books referred to in the bibliography therein. Thank you.